So Covisint started in about 2004, but that'll be part of my presentation. I will get to that in just a moment.
So I'll shut up and let you take over.
By all means, but I was not the one that said it. All right, hello. So I'm John Gleason. I lead product marketing for Covisint, and Covisint is a scalable platform as a service for the Internet of Things. So today I want to thank all of the participants here. We've heard a lot of unique companies with their perspective on the Internet of Things and how to solve those challenges. So what I want to share with you today is how Covisint solves those problems, what our particular point of view is on the Internet of Things. And so I want to cover three things with you. The first one is Covisint's history and how we evolved from where we started to being the platform of choice for Internet of Things solutions. Two, I want to talk a little bit about where our customers are today and who's using our platform and how are they solving Internet of Things problems. And then third, I want to talk a little bit about where we see the market going, where we see things evolving to, as far as how we're going to continue to solve those challenges. Now, this is the first show I've ever played in Vegas, so hopefully it'll go well. I'll do 2 shows nightly, so don't forget, tip your waitress, try the veal, and 50% off on the bar back here for all the 5s of people who attend my presentation. So let me tell you a little bit about Covisint. So back in 2000, Covisint actually was formed as a separate entity to power the world's largest B2B exchange. So it was an automotive supplier portal, and the idea was to put applications, resources from the major OEMs and Tier 1 providers all in one place, and give single sign-on access to all of the suppliers who needed access to those resources. But that solution had to be neutral, and it had to be above board so that it wouldn't have any risk of collusion. So Covisint was formed, and we built that supplier database and that supplier solution. In 2004, we were purchased by CompuWare, and they saw the value in the technology that we had developed because some of the things that we had built for that platform were the precursors for single sign-on that you know today. So Covisint's multi-domain sign-on became the SAML standard. Now, we didn't just stop at doing identity management and bringing data and resources together. We evolved our solution because the customers in that environment said, we need more than just identities, we need more than just single sign-on access to applications. We need to actually exchange information at the application level. So we built out, again, one of the largest EDI exchanges for that supplier portal, doing all of the global EDI for GM. So all of the machine-to-machine and application data exchange we handled there. And then over the last 10 years, we've continued to evolve and offer different solutions and bring that technology forward. So we entered in oil, gas, and we manage identities for all sorts of the suppliers for the oil and gas industry. We expanded into travel. We operate one of the world's largest travel portals with over 7 million users. So that's the Carlson Wagonlit Travel that operates on our platform. And as we continue to bring these additional capabilities forward, we really started to see ourselves as a 15-year-old startup because every 6 months we changed and we brought something new to the market. And then we evolved after that to get into the connected vehicle space because, again, we were managing all of that data coming through the OEM systems. We were managing all of those identities. It was a natural evolution and extension. And now what we're seeing is the platform we've built is generally applicable to IoT solutions, enabling the Internet of Things, and identity-centric problems. So when you look at our platform, Covisint sits at the edge where the enterprise needs to communicate externally, whether it's employees who need to get to access outside of of their environment, or they have suppliers, distributors, dealers who need access to inside the environment. But then as you look at that model where it's not just people and it's not just applications and resources, but it can be things as well. And so we've evolved to be able to take information from anywhere, a data endpoint agnostic, moving data from any to any endpoints and exposing it for people and things to consume. And so today where we are is we have 3,000 global customers connecting over 212,000 different organizations. We have 25 million users on our platform, and over $1 trillion in commerce takes place going through our pipes on an annual basis. We work with some of the largest organizations in the world, and we have established relationships with a really great set of both OEM partners like Cisco, as well as service delivery partners like Proficient and Tech Mahindra. So we've taken this experience in this enterprise class global platform, and now we're establishing ourselves with a vision of becoming the platform of choice for Internet of Things and identity-centric solutions. And so what that means is we have established the credentials with the volume of business we've done, the size of the projects we've taken on, to be the platform of choice. So let me talk a little bit about the absolute just inundation of net new statistics and facts about the IoT that we've gotten this week. So 9 billion new devices, 9 trillion in revenue. All started with consumer electronics and too quickly true. But when you look at the industries and the types of things and the evolution of the Internet of Things, it actually matches really well with the different industries that we've gone through at Covisint. And then when you see that, as you look at, the number of devices connected exceeding the number of people in the world, the number of devices growing to 25 billion, or if you believe Cisco, 50 billion. The point of all of this is that these massive changes are not about just what the model is today, which is connecting devices to the manufacturer for sort of the prognostic health and diagnostics use cases, but it's going to change over time. And it's going to evolve, and it's going to drive digital transformation of entire industries. So what do I mean by that? So if you look at how things are working today, take the connected car for an example. It was maybe 2009 when the first vehicles came out that had self-parking cars. By 2012, 16, 20, 25 manufacturers had self-parking cars. So what does that mean? So when you look at that innovation that was there, that drove purchase decisions for a round of vehicles. But 3 years later, by the time it was there for another person to buy their next new vehicle, that innovation was no longer differentiating. But if you take all of those individual serial innovations that at one point in time drove a purchase decision and you start to weave them together into a connected consumer experience, what you get there is something that differentiates in a way that no single innovation can. So take that connected consumer experience. Now I can start my car with my phone. I can set my geolocation on it so my kids can't drive outside of a certain geofencing area. I can configure my radio. I can do all of these things, and it takes me 3 years to get my car exactly the way I like it, with the seat just so and the temperature settings just so, and now it's time to buy a new car. And every car has all of these bells and whistles, but because I have a connected consumer experience, I can transition that experience from one vehicle to the next. So my next car is just the way I like it when I get it. That connected experience has driven purchase affinity, brand loyalty in a way that no single serial innovation can. So what's my point about this, right? So now when you look at the value of connecting all of these instruments, right, and you have this sort of value today of creating a better product by understanding mean time to failure and all of those things. You take those same digital touch points and you apply them to a consumer experience, and you start to get more value out of those. And then over time, the value of those connected touch points actually exceed the value of any individual connection as you see it today. So from our perspective, this is a natural evolution to enabling the Internet of Things. Because we look at it like this. An identity is an identity. So every single instance in which we've managed the identities of people, those same principles apply to managing the identities of things. So when you look at, you have a user who logs onto a browser, they establish session, and they access a resource. It's not really a user who's getting that session as far as the machine on the other end is concerned. It's the browser. And so there's no reason that a person has to be involved in that transaction at all. It's the same model of securing an exchange of authorizations and authentications between devices as it is for people. Similarly, moving information to and from things is very similar to moving information to and from applications. The protocols may be slightly different, but at the scale that we operate, those principles are all the same. So when you look at the automotive supplier portal and you look at the challenges that we solved there, when you look at the connected vehicle platforms, Hyundai's BlueLink, for example, that operates on our platform, those principles that we've established from identity and access management for people, for moving data around, has led to an evolution in our platform that now we're connecting things. And when you think of those connected vehicles today, it's really a viewpoint of connecting the OEM and connecting the consumer to the vehicle. But there are a lot more constituents involved in the connected vehicle experience than just those two. You have dealers. You have people who service the vehicle. You have people who update the firmware on the telematics. You have people who want to start the car or borrow the car. You have people starting whole new business models like Uber, where the car is truly a service and it's not even a matter of owning it, it's actually an asset. And managing the interaction between those individual people is only the beginning. Because how long is it until you actually have things that need to access the vehicle? Other cars need to access those things autonomously. How do you manage the authentication and the authorizations between those vehicles and those other things in a way that's autonomous but secure? And that's why Covisint's unique perspective is we've evolved as a central authority. So there's sort of two models for how you look at managing the relationships between things. You can have a mesh network, or you can have a central authority. The central authority gives you a couple of advantages because you have a single place where you can manage all of the resources and all of the authorizations, as opposed to distributing that across a number of different locations. So if you think about that from a security perspective, there have been a lot of stories in the news lately about compromises of Internet of Things, particularly in vehicles, right? With a couple of the OEMs having their either their devices hacked or their Jeeps driven off a road or whatever. And the idea there is that people who are attacking those things are attacking the open endpoints. They're attacking the streams. And when you have a central authority, you can protect those attacks, those attempts to impersonate the user, to attack open endpoints, by securing all of those endpoints and having a central authority so that any point of access, any request has to go through a central location. And so having that centralized location gives you a lot of advantages. It gives you advantages on privacy. It gives you advantages on security. And it gives you advantages in simplicity. So from a privacy perspective, any single endpoint, any single user only knows the exchange of information between those 2 points. So when I am a user and I ask for a resource, that resource only knows, do I or do I not have access to that single resource? They don't know anything about any other authorization I have, because a neutral central authority is going to protect that. It's going to limit your information exposure, and it's going to maintain that information on a need-to-know basis. So you only need to access that endpoint. You only need to know, do I or do I not have access to that one place? Now, from a security standpoint, less lines is better, right? So now if you think of a mesh network, every time you add an element or an endpoint to a mesh network, it has an exponential increase in the number of endpoints. So if you have 10 devices on a mesh network, you have 512 different connections. And when you add the 11th, you double that number. So you go to 1,024. It's a very complex way to connect a lot of things. When you have a central authority, when you add that 11th item, you add one connection. And you only have 11 total for those 11 devices. It's a very clean way to handle that method. And so with that central authority, it gives you a couple of other additional benefits. So now not only is it less points to attack, but also you have a full view across all the events in a sequence. So for example, if you have a sequence of events like you purchase gasoline in Detroit with your credit card, and then 15 minutes later you go and purchase gasoline in Los Angeles with your credit card. If you have a central authority that is watching all of those transactions and can be aware of a sequence, you can protect against that. You can secure that. But you have to have a central authority to be aware of all of those points in the sequence. So finally, simplicity, right? So when you have a mesh network, there's really only two ways to make it work. One of those is everybody agrees to the same standard and everybody rolls out exactly the same way to have exactly the same protocols, and then everything can communicate. But that never works. You can look at IR remotes, for example. There's a standard that's been around since the 70s, but how many people here have one remote on the table that operates everything in their entertainment center? Right? Nobody has that. So the idea here is that, okay, you can have a standard, but nobody will respect that standard, because when that TV manufacturer wants you to turn on the TV, they want you to hold their remote in your hand and point it at the TV and turn the remote on. And so there's an inherent conflict of interest there in following that standard. The alternative is you can commit to just one standard. You can just go with Apple or you can just go with Android. But the problem there is they evolve at different paces, and there's always going to be this next innovation that you're going to want, but you can't have it because you committed to the other standard. So how does the central authority help you with that? So the central authority gives you a couple of nice benefits. Between those walled gardens, a central authority can actually broker those communications and handle all of the orchestrations and translations. So you can actually create interoperability in a way that you can't with a mesh network, because you can allow little walled gardens to talk to each other. You can do translation and protocol translation in an SSO and federation among and between environments. So this is what makes us different. It's our identity-centric approach. It's treating things, applications, people, and resources all the same way. Because an identity is an identity is an identity. Data transfer is the same no matter where it's coming from. And so as we evolve our platform, our vision, our fundamental beliefs are that the way to scale the Internet of Things is to manage the security through a centralized authority. And as we design our platform, we're not only looking at the way things are interacting today, from the use cases that we see from prognostic health management and connected consumer experience, but to a world in which things talk autonomously to other things. And there has to be a way to manage those authorizations and those authentications in a streamlined and consistent fashion. And from the second perspective there, identity relationship management then is key, because who gets to manage how those interactions operate becomes extremely important. Sort of along the lines of when you download an application and you authorize it to use certain portions of your phone, that whole model needs to be able to apply and scale at a massive level. Requiring dynamic orchestration and control is another element there that we look at as something where things need to not only be able to interact with each other, but they need to dynamically exchange information. And that has to be done at real time at massive scale. And then finally, that massive scale has to go on through secure data integration. Being able to handle the streams of millions of devices, millions of endpoints, and millions of applications in real time. So hopefully this has given you an idea of what Covisint is, what we're about, and where we're going. If you have questions, you can come to our booth and try and win a Amazon Echo. That's our giveaway for tonight. And then I've got an open bar here for you guys, compliments. Yes, any questions here while I'm up here, though?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, this was one of the most powerful presentations. Kudos for that.
Was it the free beer?
No. It was great.
Thank you.
The thing about the centralization that you propose.
Yes.
How do you handle situations like we have the traditional car manufacturers and we have the new guys coming into the picture? Consider Google, for instance. Mm-hmm. Do you think that you can manage that easily?
I think we can, and the reason is that you have a whole lot of different resources, right? But you have people doing fundamentally the same sorts of things, albeit in different ways, and so they may take different perspectives. But what you have is you have a way where you need to be able to authorize certain activities, access to information on the vehicle, access to applications, authorizing people to use the vehicle. And there are protocols that are going to be, that are evolving today that are pretty standard. So moving data around via MQTT and things like that. Is that kind of getting to your...
Maybe I have to visit your booth and we talk more.
It might be worth talking some more.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
I was wondering if you have a client who generates a lot of data that's stored in the cloud, and they have partners that want access to that data. Is there an easy way to allow access for the partners to whatever data they're allowed to through the same network?
So there are a couple of different ways we handle that, and it depends on the volume of data. So if it is truly big data, then typically what we do is we'll work with a big data partner and then manage the authorization and the access to that data, right? And so typically we'll web service enable that. One example that we're doing today is for one of the automotive manufacturers. They have 23,000 dealerships, and they were retiring a legacy system. And what they were trying to do was figure out how do we integrate with the different dealer management systems and then tie those together with the CRM applications to give us a 360-degree view of what's on the lots, what are the consumers shopping for, and then how can we take that data and make it available as a service? Because they wanted to retire a legacy system that was creating reporting based on that. But at the same time, they also wanted to leverage that data for a consumer experience to say, hey, same data, let me do click, sign, and drive. where I go to the website, I pick out my vehicle, I go to Kelley Blue Book, I get my vehicle estimated, I send that information to my dealership, they tell me, here's the car you're going to get, and when I walk in, that car is ready, I scribble my finger, and away I go. And I don't spend 4 hours at the dealership on one Saturday, 4 more hours at the dealership, 2 hours with the finance and incentives guy going, no, seriously, I want an extra $50 for my car. So that is a model that we're doing today, and it's very successful. And it's basically a combination of sort of that's medium-sized data, but we web service enable it and then secure it with OAuth tokens and whatnot. Yeah.
Wondering who you see as your closest competitor, and also do any of the M2M service providers like AT&T, Sprint, Core do any of this, because they talk about security as well?
Yep, so the question was, who is our biggest competitor, and do we see the telcos as a competitor? And today, our biggest competitor is honestly either internal IT or an SI doing a build-it-yourself, so taking the various components and trying to build those together to get to a comparable solution. And what we found is that one of two things happens. One is the amount of time it actually takes to build the infrastructure before you actually get to building any business value is so long that they will either come back to us or another platform as a service, because honestly, nobody's doing it that way anymore. It is a platform as a service world, and that's the way you should build these things because it's more cost effective. As far as competing with the telcos, in connected vehicle, they are established in all those places because they own the pipes and the connectivity. But what we find is that we don't compete directly with them as far as doing the integrations, integrating with the back-end systems, and offering the platform on which consumer applications or business applications can be built. We're not seeing that today.
I have a logistical nightmare in my life, but it's nothing to do with you.
Awesome.
Excellent. Give him a round of applause, please.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. Don't forget, tip your waitress. Try the
Tip
meal.
the waitress.